It's Sunday, November 30th, and I want to talk about the Russian economy. Um, Russia's economy is quietly buckling under the pressure, the strain. And for my money, it seems like this is the place where Ukrainians are going to be most successful. They have to hold the Russians on the battlefield, but if they can cause the Russian economy to come to its knees, that's the way forward for Ukraine. Now, why is it happening? Well, I would ask the opposite question and say, how can it not happen given everything that I'm going to show you here? And I'm going to show you lots of things just over the last like 4 or 5 days. Just 4 or 5 days. I'll show you the dates and then I'll show you the articles about it. But I want to start in a different place. I want to start here. I saw this. Czechia made 607 million more than it spent on Ukraine aid. That's total Ukraine aid, says outgoing Prime Minister Falia. The old weapons, tax revenues, and 1.19 billion in reimbursements helped turn military support into a net gain. Seriously, this is the article from Euromaidan Press. Here it is. Recently elected Andrei Babis is set to take office as prime minister on 1 December 2025. His upcoming leadership has raised concerns that Czechia could halt its support for Ukraine. Czechia gave Ukraine old weapons worth 723 million and got 1 billion in return. The total expenditures by all Czech ministries and government agencies related to helping Ukraine since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022 amounted to 91.3 billion crowns or 4.36 billion US dollars. But state revenues linked to this support reached 1.4 billion crowns or 4.97 billion US dollars. This includes 3.37 billion from taxes and social health insurance contributions, so taking in Ukrainian refugees, and 1.19 billion in reimbursements for military aid. So they actually made money of supporting Ukraine. Now, they weren't doing it to make money. See, this is the difference. In the last couple of days, we've been talking about the Trump administration looking at a business deal peace plan rather than a peace plan for just peace kind of reasons. The Czech Republic has been doing exactly the opposite, and it's paying off. The Czech state certainly did not lose money by helping Ukraine. Quite the opposite, Falia told reporters. We must not overlook the question of justice and the righteous struggle of the Ukrainians, the security considerations, and everything else. But the numbers are absolutely clear. In doing right and doing good, they actually have benefited in the process because Ukrainians are driving industry in their society, that extra manpower that has come to the Czech Republic. Okay, now let's look at Russia and see what's going on. Starting in November 26, so 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, the last 5 days, what you see in this chart, interesting, since the beginning of the year, the volume of bonds in circulation in Russia has increased by 6.160 trillion rubles. So they're floating bonds because they need money. That's the headline here for that day. November 27th, this chart, this is interesting, even with the Russian government's fraudulent inflation numbers, and they're fake. Official data releases are no longer able to hide the progressively worsening drop in consumer spending. People just aren't buying more over time. They're buying less year over year. It's just they can't actually. So here's this is the nominal number, and here is the actual. So it doesn't make sense that Russia would be spending more if they're doing well, and they're spending a good deal less. Okay. November 27th, stunning collapse in Russian manufacturing data. October production year-on-year statistics. Tractors are down 47% year-over-year. Elevators down 35%. Internal combustion engines down 42%. Passenger cars down 47%. These are all just different categories where things are just looking bad for their economy. And then some things have a multiplier effect. Like here's November 27th. Auto is one of those multiplier effects, right? The auto industry spurs on all kinds of other satellite industries around it. Russia's largest car manufacturer continues to spiral, announcing mass layoffs amid collapsed sales. So AutoVAZ will sharply reduce production and cut workers' wages by almost half due to the collapse in demand for Lada. They're not buying as much. The collapse in demand for a lot of cars, not just because they're terrible cars, but because nobody has the money to buy them. Okay, November 27th as well. This was like looking around the country and seeing all the places where Russia's going, you know what, we really don't have the money to spend for veterans. Okay, here we are. Several regions of Russia have suspended payments to families of those killed in the war against Ukraine. Families used to receive number of one-time benefits, including payout to surviving spouse, if any, or to adult children, or to parents. Families were immediately given a presidential payment of 5 million rubles. That's $63,200. So for every, and then they're sending these people into the meat grinder. So that adds up really quick. Okay. Now, authorities in Caucasia suspended the funeral payouts reportedly due to regional budget problems. On November 19th, the head of the People's Front in Caucasia, Kenzia Bulganova, revealed that the absence of such payments was happening or not happening. Earlier, posthumous payments to relatives of soldiers killed in the war were also canceled in Zabaskalisky Krai. In order to avoid promised payments or funeral payouts, the state simply forgets of those listed as missing in action. As long as a soldier remains classified as missing, no compensation is due. In Ulyanovsk region, a deputy from the ruling party and a coordinator of local defenders of the Fatherland Fund, they were arrested. Why? They convinced an acquaintance to sign a contract with the Ministry of Defense and then enter into a fake marriage so that they could later collect all available payouts for him when he is killed. Russia's tactics remain unchanged. They're sending cannon fodder. They continue to die in assaults. I mean, they're just spending people like water, right? The Kremlin keeps claiming that Russian economy cannot be knocked to its knees, but I'm arguing, how can it not be knocked to its knees given everything that's going on and the things that you're about to see? Everything is going very well, they say. But the fact is that some regions are now without funeral payments. That shows the opposite. There are problems, and they're growing like a snowball. Okay. November 27th as well. Russians are cutting back on food. On food. More than ever, SureBank's food spending index has dropped almost fivefold from early 2023 to October 2025. Food is more expensive, but people are buying less. Sales of basic food products in September to October 2025 alone fell by 5% in physical volume. Commerçant reported an 8 to 10% decline in consumption of milk, pork, buckwheat, and rice. Even Times 5 Group, the country's largest, or X5 Group, the country's largest retail chain, said that its revenue is rising, but profits have plunged by almost 20%. This means consumers are switching to cheaper goods. Like when you don't have the money, you instead of going to a nice restaurant, you might go to fast food, McDonald's, something along those lines. That's the kind of dynamic at play. Bloomberg's experts say this collapse in consumption is a direct result of Russia's war against Ukraine. Between January and September 2025, the number of supermarkets and hypermarkets decreased by 1.4%. 67 large stores have closed in that same period of time. And margins at the supermarket are usually razor thin to begin with. So yeah, it's just bad all the way around. Okay, November 27th, again, Russia economy continues full collapse mode with federal budget revenue falling by minus 12% year over year. And it's going to get worse because the hits on oil, that's where a lot of this budget revenue shortfall is going to come from. November 28th. Here we see year-over-year earnings first 9 months of 2025 as oil giant Rosneft is down a stunning 70%. Where did that come from? Why did that happen? Sanctions, U.S. sanctions against Rosneft have been brutal. The company is responsible for roughly 40% of Russia's oil production. So, and their profits are down 70%, or year-over-year earnings are down 70%. Okay, November 28th, Russia's war machine is hitting a wall. 6 trillion ruble deficit. Oil revenues down 35%. Russia's railway is buried in 4 trillion ruble debt. India cuts imports of oil by 1 million barrels per day. China charges 87% more for key tech than they need to. Like, Chinese are profiting off this. Okay, so what you see here, this is the discount versus Middle Eastern crude. This is what the discount has gone. And as of November, it's spiked, right? And this is Russia's share of Chinese imports. And yeah, so China's taken advantage of them in a big way. November 29th, General Ben Hodges says Russia's economy is clearly not booming. I agree. Without effective railways, it will be paralyzed. Right? They're really dependent on railways, like we're dependent on roads. I mean, in order to move military stuff, they're dependent on railways. Devastating attacks on oil exports are decisive. Decisive is a military term. Like this is having a real impact on the war itself. As they continue to hit oil exports, it's going to continue to bring the Russian economy to its knees. And we see things like this. This was November 29th. Russian oil exports through Novorossiysk have been completely halted. The drones disabled one of the key terminals in the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. Caspian Pipeline Consortium concerned that single-point mooring system used for loading oil was seriously damaged. No casualties were reported. The facility can no longer operate. So this is the same day that they hit the two Ghost Fleet oil tankers. And here we see this about this. Kazakhstan has reacted sharply to the strike on Novorossiysk. Listen to this, Kazakhstan began redirecting its oil through bypass routes. So a key player is like, I got to get it from somewhere. Maybe I got to get it from a safer place than what the Russians can do. Any use of force against this facility directs risks to the global energy security and harms the economies of all participants, including Kazakhstan. The Kazakhstanis said about the Ukrainian strike. The ministry has urgently activated a backup plan. Export volumes are already being rerouted through alternative routes to avoid shutting down production at major fields. So that might be some Russian oil, but it could also be from other places. But that's what happened after the Ukrainians hit this terminal. Okay, November 29th, tax revenue estimated for 2025 are in, and they are terrible in Russia. 5 trillion rubles income below planned. Oil and gas down 21%. Import VAT down 24%. Import duties down 19%. Import excise taxes down 24%. Profit and tax from personal income down 4%. Recycling fee down 44%. It's just bad all the way around for the Russian economy. But Putin is going to, aggravate the situation. Putin assigned Russia's 2026 budget, allocating at least $166 billion to the war against Ukraine. Big chunk of the budget, right? 1/3 of all spending and the highest military outlay since the Soviet era. To fund it, Russia/social programs. So they're not going to enjoy that very much there. November 29th, we see this. Russian economy continues to show signs of fracturing as Russia continues to prioritize its wartime economy over stability. So there was a law signed on November 27th, increasing the VAT, the value added tax, from 20 to 22%. That's going to take a chunk, and that's going to help replenish things for them to some degree. But there's something really key here that's going to really be problematic. Putin also signed into law approving the 2026 to 2028 federal budget, which allocates 235 trillion rubles, roughly 3 trillion for 2026, and has listen to this, target inflation rate of no more than 4% per year. That can't possibly be. I mean, there's no way, given everything that's going on in the economy, that they're going to have a target inflation rate, a real target inflation, or a real inflation rate of 4%. Putin also signed a law on November 28th, increasing the minimum salary, approximately $349. You don't have to increase like the minimum wage unless something's bad happening in the economy. An increase in the VAT will likely cause inflation. Okay, so an increase in the VAT causes inflation, and their target inflation rate, again, 4% per year, right? I mean, it's just, you can see it coming at a distance. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. To rise further while simultaneously lowering cash flow in the Russian economy and further stagnating Russian economic growth. It's just, it's like designed to be bad. Okay, November 29th, the owner of major Chinese drone parts supplier has taken a stake in Rusticat, a leading Russian manufacturer of the VT-40 FPV drone widely used by Russia against Ukraine. This new tie-up marks a previously unknown level of cooperation between a Chinese company and Russian military supplier. This could be what they see as partly their way out, but it's going to mean subservience to the Chinese. And then finally, I'll leave you with this. This is Boris Yeltsin assuring the world that there would be no ruble devaluation just 72 hours before ruble devaluation. Let's see what he had to say. People are asking him about that. Boris Nikolaevich, about the devaluation. Everything depends on one phrase from you. No, it will not. There will not be a devaluation. No, are you sure? Yes, I am completely sure. There won't be a devaluation. I am not making this up. It is not my imagination. It is not that I simply do not want it. Everything is calculated. It is monitored every day. It's daily work and daily control. Just before he did it. 72 hours before. And this work will not go without control. Okay. Just before he devaluated. So it's going to happen like in a very quick way. Okay, my shout out is to Finman, undergraduate Patreon member. Thank you for your support. Thank you all for watching this. Hopefully this helps you understand what's going on in Russia and why it's just cracking and buckling, and it's not going to there's no way that it can be everything according to plan the way that it is. That's my contention here. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.